Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. And I'm your host, Phil Bakke. I'm joined by my co-host, Mikka Burrell. Mikka, well, I mean, not much going on the Locomotive side, but I hear the weather is at least cooling down in El Paso, so we've got that going for us.
A little bit, yeah. Yesterday it was like nice and overcast. I think the high was like in the 70s, so like people were out in sweats, which I thought was a little extra, jumping the gun there a little bit, but it's cooling down a little bit. Yeah, it's back in the 90s today, but I mean that is better than triple digits. So I'm ready for fall. I don't know about you, but I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Well, it was one of those things where we had this weird flip here in the Midwest where it suddenly you guys got the cool weather and it is now hot as balls out here. So
and
it was
humid,
like,
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what the feel today, I guess. Like the high was only in the 90s, but the whatever, like it felt like, or heat index or whatever you want to call it, was like 103 or something like that. So not a fun day in Ohio.
No.
And it was like the actual high in Chicago today was like 105, which is crazy.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So yeah, it was not a good day. Although I will say, we did get some funny videos and stuff of my nephew going through the sprinkler because my sister just had him outside in the water. So yeah. But heat, cold, whatever the weather, El Paso Locomotive, no change. Unfortunately, in recent days, Locomotive showed some spirit against Indy, but still came up short and suffered a 3-2 loss, their fifth loss in a row. And we'll talk a lot more about that coming up here in a little bit. As far as some admin stuff to get out of the way, we are a podcast first and foremost, so you can find us on your favorite podcast app. And we are also on social media, though, and Twitter and Instagram are the two that we're probably most active on. So you can follow us there at Seriously Loco. Give us a follow, a like, whatever. Check us out. And if you are a follower of the show and all that stuff, on our social media, we often will tweet out asking for input from fans, because at the end of the day, like I said, this is a supporter-run show. And supporters are, make up the entire listener base too. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're telling the story and speaking to what the fans want to talk about. And so often we'll send out asking questions or asking for questions and comments before our episodes. So if you find us on socials, you can participate and we'll talk about your question live on air. With that out of the way, we'll get to the result and everything from Saturday, and then we'll obviously look ahead to Locomotive's upcoming game against Hartford, which I'm dreading beyond belief for some reason. But Mikka, first we had a surprise drop basically right as we started recording. We had a transaction executed by El Paso Locomotive, and it looks like we're getting some defensive reinforcements in the form of Noah Dolenmeyer. So he's coming on loan from LAFC. He's spent most of the time this year with their 2 team, but what have we, in our quick little research before we got started here, what have we learned about Noah Dolenmeyer and what he brings to El Paso Locomotive's defense?
Well, I mean, he brings another body in the defense, right? I mean, we're absolutely just needing warm bodies. But all joking aside, I mean, I think the thing that stands out most about Noah is his size. I mean, the kid is 6'6", and just 23 years old, I think. So, arguably still like filling out that frame. So yeah, he's a unit, left-footed. So he primarily plays on the left side of the defense. And with that frame, you and I both discovered that his aerial duel success rate is off the charts. He wins about 76% of his aerial duels, and that's from a handful of games in MLS Next Pro, where he's primarily been playing for LAFC. I think he was a draft pick for LAFC, and then they stuck him in the reserve side. But yeah, it's a good bit of business on paper. We needed the reinforcements, especially with Bence Pavkovic moving on, and I expect him to slot in pretty much right away, probably in relief of Jose Carrillo, who has had a baptism by fire, like I joked last time I was on, into the Locomotive team. So probably going to relieve him on that left side, and partner Eric McHugh or Yuma, who I think may have picked up another injury or something. But yeah, we needed the signing, and I welcome it, to be honest.
Despite, his numbers being in MLS Next Pro, and people can, whatever, talk about the quality on display and all that stuff. The fact that he's winning 3/4 of the aerial duels, or better than 3/4 of the aerial duels that he's involved in, that is an elite number. And obviously getting a big body in defense, like Eric McHugh's not a small individual, but like we haven't had that sort of dominant presence to win headers. Particular, I mean, we've seen the vulnerability on set pieces in particular, but in general, we don't have a lot of like guys who are great in the air. And we've talked about attacking defensive set pieces, and this seems like the sort of guy that you would love to plug in to that situation when you've got an issue, because he clearly goes and wins most of the aerial duels that he's faced with. So yeah, I think for me makes a lot of sense, and because he's domestically based, he can slot right in. And like you said, at this point, like we do have a little bit of a situation in our, amongst our defensive personnel, that with Bence leaving and Yuma potentially, I mean, he's been on and off in terms of, he had a long injury layoff, so it wouldn't be shocking if he's picked up a knock, just given the fact that it's tough to return scot-free from those sorts of long injuries. So all that being said, I think it's a piece of business that makes a lot of sense. And it'll be interesting to see just how quickly Noah is starting, like even beyond making the squad. I'm interested to see how quickly he's just kind of thrust into the starting 11. And if they see him as someone who can kind of solve an immediate problem or plug an immediate hole.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of giving Cole Turner, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
A player that came on loan from Philadelphia Union and did a job, nothing like super outstanding, but no mistakes or anything like that. So if Noah can do a job for us, from now until the business end, I think it's a successful signing, but obviously we have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just what he brings. And with that being said, since we last recorded, Locomotive also conducted more business and announced the signing of Peter Knudsen, Faroese international. He most recently played he is a forward. He's played on the wings, plays as a forward. He most recently played with or in the Danish first division. Didn't get a ton of games in Denmark, to be fair. And a bulk of his like professional career and a lot of the goals that he's contributed to or scored have come in the Faroese first division. So on top of Eric McHugh, who has some first team experience in the Faroese first division, Knudsen makes his way to Locomotive. Mikka, I mean, it's clear that Locomotive have had problems goal scoring. Obviously the game against Indy, they get a couple, but not enough to win, unfortunately. It seemed like we need a little bit of a refresh in attack. How do you feel about Knudsen being the guy to do that?
Yeah, I mean, for one, he's a forward, and I think that's another area of need in the squad. I think the attacking patterns and personnel, to be fair, have been a little bit dry, if you want to call it that. Like we just need some imagination and a fresh idea up front. So Knudsen's a good signing in that regard. He is a player that I've been able to like scout a little bit more than Dollenmeyer, and it looks like, you know, the goals that he scores, a lot of them are first time. He's a first touch finisher a lot of the time, and I think that in this poor stretch, I think, what is it, 10 matches now, winless, we've missed that kind of killer instinct in the box. And, you know, with Lucho Soloniak so off the boil, someone who can score goals first time, I mean, that's great, you know. Obviously, it remains to be seen if he can replicate that in USL, because he did score a lot in the Faroe Islands First Division. But I venture to say USL Championship is a higher level of play. But I've never watched the Faroe Islands League. I don't even know if that's possible in the United States. But yeah, he adds to the Scandinavian contingent as well. Of course, we know Brian coached in Sweden. We've got Petrovic, we've got McHugh, and now we have Knudsen. So nice little core of Scandinavians, I guess, being built in the squad. So hopefully he settles well. And I hope that he uses sunblock, because that man is pale and it's brutal out here. So that's, And nobody take him to Cometa or anything crazy like that, okay? We need to keep players.
I totally agree in the fact that, you know, I think a refresh is something, and injecting some fresh ideas, injecting some different approach to attacking football is important right now. I mean, I on the last episode with Christian, I kind of outlined, like, as Christian was naming players in attack, I was kind of adding the context of, like, just how, when you say, you know, Lucho's off the boil, it's like just how bad it's been recently. And I mean, the reality is, like, the goals, like the goals that Locomotive do get in the Indy game, which we will get to here in a little bit, are a deep cross headed in by a central midfielder and the fullback who assisted that first goal then hitting an absolute rocket. You know, neither of which were contributed to in any significant way by our attackers. And that's not to take away from the goals themselves. It's just to say that, like, we do have a deficit right now in terms of goal scoring from our attacking players.
And Josue Aron Gomez has just been, like, woefully unlucky, hitting the post a lot. So yeah, he's been hitting the post a lot, and Lucho's been off the boil, Zacarias as well, I think. So hopefully he can inject some life into this attack. But looks like he's training. I was looking at the training pictures earlier. He looks like he was in some of those. So and along with Dollenmeyer, hopefully we can get these boys up to speed soon. I imagine they might be going across the country with this squad to Hartford. So we'll see.
Honestly, talking about Knudsen's complexion, him getting started in Hartford is probably a better introduction to the U.S. than straight to El Paso. But it does seem like he's been training anyways. So we'll see how he adapts. And I am interested to see, you know, we talked for a long time about the fact that this squad felt like it needed reinforcements. We are starting to see some of them trickle in. It'll be interesting to see whether it's too little, too late, what time it takes them to adapt to the system, the playing style, all of those things, and whether they make an immediate difference. Here's hoping that they hit the ground running and can make an immediate impact, because Lord knows we need it. The Seriously Loco match review. That does bring us, Mikka. We have to talk about this result. El Paso Locomotive 2, Indy 11 3 in Southwest University Park. I mean, we may as well just address the elephant in the room up front. Mark Lowry, obviously victorious on his return to Southwest University Park. So for you as a fan, that obviously, like, we were I would say we were close with Mark while he was here, had a good relationship with him. What were you feeling in the aftermath of this game where Locomotive did show some improvement, I think it's fair to say, but ultimately succumbed, and to a guy who, while, you know, we're cordial with him, we certainly wouldn't want him to come back and be victorious with his new team. How did you experience like this result in the aftermath immediately following the loss?
You know, Phil, this is not copium, I swear, but I actually felt more anxious about it before the match than afterwards, even though we lost, because the context of this loss is important, I think. We're in a really bad streak. Obviously, it's been 2 months. I mean, to the point that Eighth Notch felt they needed to protest, which we'll get onto, I'm sure, at some point. So, like, all of those things just seem to like outweigh Mark coming back after the match. Before the match, I was like, oh, this is bad. Like, he's just gonna like kick us while we're down, and so he did. At least, you know, on the scoreboard. But after the match, I felt like he was kind of like third or fourth on my narrative list of this game, because I do think this is the first time in 2 months that we've looked alive, you know. Like there's a heartbeat there, there's a pulse, and you know, while we didn't get the 3 points, and it could have conceivably been a draw, Eric Covio has that chance on 10 minutes to open the scoring, and it just goes just wide, and you know, we had some other good chances throughout, so could have been different on a different day, and it just happened to be Mark's day and Indy 11's day. But yeah, after the match, it was the furthest thing from my mind. I was just thinking about how much better we looked, and how that gave me a little bit of hope, even though we did lose ultimately. But, you know, whatever. Congratulations, Mark. I don't love it. And I'm glad that he didn't, like, at least that I saw, didn't celebrate too outwardly or anything. He did. I saw him speaking to Eighth Notch before the game, so that was a classy touch. But yeah, hopefully we'll just get him back if and when we go play them at their place. So
yeah. Well, and I mean, I think to his credit, he didn't kind of make himself the main character, if that makes sense. Like, Mark stayed pretty low key, did obviously enjoy the win, I'm sure, like, against his former team, and at the same time, like you said, speaking to Eighth Notch, taking some time for the fans, like, didn't overly celebrate, didn't make a meal of it, as they say, you know.
He did bring on Mishak and Brian Rivion in garbage time, though, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
that was, and he started Sebastian Velasquez, so I just thought he was trying to give those boys, like, their time on their old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right.
And so I think credit to Mark for sure, for just, like, that could have been a much weirder reunion, and I think all in all, it was pretty low key, despite the fact that the match itself not low key at all. Sure. It ends 3-2, and I mean, talking through the goals themselves, Mikka. Well, I guess maybe starting with the starting lineup. The interesting thing here is trying to sift through El Paso Locomotive, and right now I feel like we're in a point with this team where it's like, is an absence an injury, or is an absence more than that? And it was a little strange that for the first time I mean, I don't have the stat in front of me or anything like that, but for the first time in what feels like forever, none of Lucho, Eder, or Yuma were even in the 18, which is like, I mean, that's you'd
huge. Have
to go back to maybe year one to find a lineup that didn't include any one of them. And let alone all three at once. So is the significance that, hey, these guys are just absolutely like destroyed, especially for Eder and Lucho, and maybe there's a knock to Yuma, or was this like something else from Brian?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, I think they have been shattered, to be fair, Lucho Solaniak, because for all his trying, like, it's just not coming off for him, and maybe some time away from the pitch is a good thing. Edo Berlelli as well, like, we know he's been adapting to this new kind of hybrid role, I guess you could say, kind of like a third center back almost in the attacking phases where he's not getting up and down the flank as much. And, you know, mentally, I'm sure that can be a little bit taxing on top of the form that that the team is in, you know. So those players, those veterans, I think it's fair to say maybe just needed a break, and Brian wanted to shuffle the pack a little bit. And to be fair, I think the team did respond and did play to something close to their potential. And it just wasn't meant to be on the night. I mean, truly, I do think that this was a lot more positive than anything I've seen in the past 2 months. And I don't know if I'm over-egging it, but
no, I totally agree. I think there were moments, especially early on in this match, I was like, oh, we're actually the better side, which I don't know that I've been able to say in a half of football that we've played in at least the past 6 games, maybe 7 games.
Yeah.
I would say Monterey Bay is the last time that we exited a game and I thought we were the better side and deserved to win.
Yes.
And that was like 7 games ago.
Well, yeah, and I think that you bring up the start of the game, and I think actually Mark's tactics were kind of playing into our tactics, which was to press high early, try to get on the ball early, or at least force mistakes, and we were doing that because they were playing out from the back. Yeah. So clearly Brian Clairhout and company did their homework on the former gaffer and the kind of football he likes to play, because they were, you know, we know Mark will always stick to his principles. Doesn't matter, you know, rain or shine. And they kept going short with the ball, and I think that it was really playing into our hands, really, as we were pressing high, and Eric Calvillo was a menace early doors. I mean, I said, he nearly has that goal in the 10th minute, just wide, and then he thought that it went off a defender for a corner, but I don't think it was to be. I think they called it a goal kick, but I mean, if that goal goes in, it is a block
too. Yeah,
if that goal goes in, conceivably it's 3-3 and we get a point, and you know that we have something to show for our efforts. But I do think that it was a lot more lively than we've seen the boys, to be fair.
Well, and we talked about we mentioned Eric Calvillo specifically, and that first big opportunity is a combination of Zacharias and him pressing well in tandem, hunting in packs, as they say, you know, and Calvillo obviously wasn't done in terms of like the level of energy and kind of where he was popping up, as the goal, the opener in the 21st minute, comes from Mark Navarro picking out Calvillo at the back post. Calvillo kind of has to manipulate his body in such a way to get this header on goal, but does so well. And I think like this game did mark somewhat of a turnaround for Eric kind of personally, because he's been, by his standards, I imagine, and by certainly like our standards watching Eric over the past couple of seasons, he's been at a low ebb, and this game did feel like a bit of a turning point for him personally, within kind of a turning point of the rest of the squad.
Yeah, I think we've said in the past that, like, maybe in this system, Eric has more responsibilities off the ball, and so he can't crash the box. But when we see him shooting, when we see him crashing the box, like, he's got something about him to his game in that offensive third. And I'm glad to see him rewarded. I think the header was really clever. I mean, first of all, the pick out is, I mean, it might be second to only Messi's pick out last night in the Open Cup. I mean, he absolutely places it right on Eric Calvillo's head at that far post. And The header is very clever too because he heads it into the ground, and I think the bounce is what takes Choke out of it, and it goes into the corner of the net. So, I mean, I think, yeah, he had to kind of contort his body to get there and do some acrobatics, but ultimately a really good header into the ground and bounces in. So, I mean, at that point, I was thinking, like, we're flying, and we're actually being rewarded for the work that we're doing off the ball to then force these turnovers and quick counters. But we kept giving up the lead.
And that is kind of what, I guess, like, what this game amounted to. There's a big intervention by McHugh right before halftime to keep it 1-0 at the time. And once again, it's this ball that we saw so often out to our left-hand side of defense, like this time going in behind Miles on the right-hand side. And this cutback, which McHugh makes a great intervention and stops. But it was kind of like the warning shot, basically, right before halftime of, this Indy side is going to find some vulnerabilities here. And unfortunately, like, it wasn't that long into the second half when they finally did find the vulnerability. And it's a deep cross off of a restart from a throw-in.
Yeah. This goal, I mean, Guenzotti's a clever player, and I think that his movement on the night was really good. Somehow he kept finding himself right in between Eric McHugh and Jose Carrillo, which, I mean, that's like defending 101. You never want the striker in between you. And he timed his run to perfection off that cross, and I mean, it's pretty point blank for him. A player like him's not missing from that range. But I mean, we saw that pass a lot where it was just like arced around our back line, and it played so perfectly that it was not offside or anything like that. And I think there was just a naivete to the way that we defended on the night, that Indy exploited it once and then said, let's keep doing that. And we kept not responding to it. So that was frustrating for sure. Just seeing the ball fly past the back of the back line over and over again. But yeah, I mean, good finish from Guenzotti, to be fair. And I figured that he would score. I think I even said that before kickoff when we were making our predictions. Like, Guenzotti's going to get one, if not two. And so it was.
Yeah, I think this is kind of along the lines of just talking about this shift to the back three, or back five, however you want to describe it. But the back three, I would say, in those three center backs, in this case, it's, McHugh, Carrillo, and Navarro. And amongst the three of them, to have a striker in between you when you're playing three center backs is really disappointing, because it's just, from the outset, you should outnumber them, particularly when they were playing the shape that they were. So, I think that's the main takeaway, is like, there's just not a world in which Guenzotti should be able to be in behind Carrillo there, and he has a good chance to cut it out. Unfortunately, like, Carrillo kind of whiffs on an attempted clearance as it comes in towards Guenzotti, and there's just, like, obviously playing like facing your own goal is not where a defender wants to be. So it's a bad situation that he's put in by the ball, which is a great ball from Jack Blake as well. But the bottom line is, like, it's not where Carrillo wants to defend from, but it's also one of those things where you just, like, at that point, you kind of have no choice. Like, you have to make the intervention. And he just doesn't, which is, I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, in that he gets caught out a little bit, and, like, he definitely is not the type of center back who wants to be facing his own goal or trying to make that intervention, like, in the air. He's gonna want to, challenge something on the ground or whatever. But the bottom line is, it becomes a theme in that like not dealing with the danger is essentially like what undoes Locomotive on the night. But there was still some more positives, and it was just a couple of minutes later that Locomotive retook the lead. And I mean, this goal from Mark Navarro, one of those where my first instinct was keeper probably should do better. And at the same time, as I watched it back, I'm like, man, Navarro has just hit that to where, like, if Trilk gets in the way, he may have to leave the game. Like, he may be injured by this shot. So I went from being like, keeper should do better to like, keeper probably remains in the game due to avoiding this.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the thought process I had too, because when you see the goal, it is really right at him. In what do they call it in tennis? Like body serves, where they're trying to hit it like right in the center of your core. And I mean that's where Marc put it. And yeah, he's either getting out of the way or getting injured. Because the pace on that ball was wicked. That thing was moving. And yeah, I mean, I think at first I was like, maybe Trilk should like punch that, but I think he was caught out by the pace of it. And it just flies in. And I do want to give a shout out to Dennis Kosician, by the way, because in the build-up, I mean, this is like a pretty like normal counterattack, but he lets the ball roll to Marc. So that's just really good game awareness there and football IQ, because we've criticized Kosician before for like taking shots that he should really lay off to other players, and he does that here. So I want to highlight that he did really well to do that. And I think it helped that the defender missed the clearance as well. And, Mark Navarro scoring an absolute screamer after just setting up the first goal for us with his family from Spain in the swap. Celebrating that he is going to be a dad. So he had the baby bump celebration going, which we've seen a lot this season. So congratulations to Marc and his family, obviously.
Absolutely. It was one of the, watching it back to, like, I think the fact, like what you said about the pace catching Trilk out, I think there is the way he hits it almost knuckles a little bit too. So I think there's a lot of aspects of, like, I think it was easy for people to be like, oh, like Trilk should do better. And I think he clearly doesn't see it right off of the foot. Like, he's a little unsighted because he reacts kind of late. And I think the ball is moving wickedly, like with pace, but also like shifting as it travels. So yeah, I think it does just catch him out. It's a hell of a strike from Marc. And the goal and the assist did earn him Team of the Week honors, which, like, for a player to get Team of the Week, like into the Team of the Week in a losing effort, is obviously a very special performance. And one of those things where, I mean, at the end of the game, I think we're left kind of ruining the fact that, man, Marc just like tried to put this team on his back tonight, and nearly did, like nearly succeeded in getting a result through his own kind of graft and his own quality, which shone on the night.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a man of the match performance, a goal, an assist. I mean, I think earlier I had said that Guenzada got between McHugh and Carrillo, but it was actually McHugh and Navarro. So I guess if there was any criticism, it would be in the defending. I mean, of course, we kept giving up the lead. But yeah, the part of the performance that makes it a man of the match performance to me is he himself responds to us conceding, because that came, only 3 minutes?
3 minutes
after Guenzada scored. So, I mean, those are the hallmarks of a leader, I think, and he just, it was his night, but unfortunately not a night for the whole team.
Yeah, I mean, as watching all of the highlights back and the chances we conceded, even before the goals, there's these chances where I think it's just kind of clear that the whole like this back three just isn't finding out the right, like they haven't hit any sort of rhythm or any sort of understanding of how they're supposed to interact like as a unit. And these couple of chances that come like in the immediate aftermath of Navarro's goal are from either like their first is just a long ball over the top, which gets chested down, like with Carrillo, McHugh, and Navarro like all in the area. That ball is like chested down. It's not a header one in the air. Like there's just no challenge for the ball. The second is a set piece where again the ball goes into an area like header's not cut out. Like McHugh gets caught underneath it. Navarro's caught on the other side. So it's just like the whole arrangement just like isn't quite working yet. And it was something that Brian mentioned in his post-training remarks this week on Tuesday. He basically said like, yep, and we're like learning this new system, which I guess we could probably talk about in the Hartford, like in looking ahead to Hartford. But it's clear that like these things are not quite clicking yet for Locomotive, and it was maybe the most on display in the goal by Callum Chapman Page from a corner kick. The ball travels all the way through the box on the ground, and just nobody deals with it, and it just eventually finds Chapman Page at the back post. I mean, before we started recording, I had some strong words for this goal, but the bottom line is like, this is the type of goal that you just simply can't concede when you're on the sort of run that Locomotive are on.
No, yeah, I mean, that's just not a goal that professional teams concede. And the corners, and I mean, if that is intentional, then fair play. But it looks like a bad corner. But then it just, you see Callum Chapman Page there ready to pounce, and it's like, okay, maybe this is from the training ground, just happened to work. But no, I mean, for the most part, I think someone has to cut that out. I don't know who it was, that first man at the near post, but I mean, from there, once it goes past him, it's just a disaster. And I really don't know what it doesn't matter what system we're playing. The set piece defending continues to be a shambles.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's going to take to improve that. And to be fair, I don't really know who runs the set pieces or if that is someone's job. I mean, I know before it used to be Dom Casciato, current Union Omaha boss, who designed all of our set plays. So I don't know. It just has to improve because so many teams in this league are going to feast on those kind of opportunities. And a big body like Chapman Page getting in there, bound to happen.
And the problem with that whole sequence as well is the fact that Locomotive then kind of contrived to do the thing that we've been talking about recently, and like some of the like mental weakness and stuff like that. And I know those are like strong words, but what we're talking about, I guess broadly, is like the fact that when we concede, particularly when we concede an equalizer or something like that, it's only 6 minutes later that the dagger comes, and that's the like this kind of lack of maybe confidence, well, definitely confidence throughout this run, is like it's leading to these sorts of behaviors that we saw last year, where it's like when they concede one, you can almost smell the next goal coming, like out of the frustration from conceding the one. And the construction of Indy's third is quite simple in that it's a kind of a ball over the press out to the right-hand side, which was maybe the adaptation, I guess, from the first half of Mark's identified, like, hey, we're not playing through their press particularly well, so just stop doing it and bypass it when you can. he finds some space, and then Douglas Martinez actually makes a very intelligent run. But the reason it's so intelligent is because Eric McHugh is the only one holding a high line, and the other two El Paso center backs have dropped. So McHugh is thinking he's playing Martinez offside when he's really just allowing him loads of space. And this is where, again, system-wise, it just feels like it's not clicking because Carrillo and Navarro have dropped off, and McHugh is standing ball side of Douglas Martinez, allowing him a free run in behind. The ball to Martinez is good, and the finish is still actually quite good. I think there's maybe some questions there for Diaz, but one-on-one, it's always difficult to save that sort of thing. I think he actually does get a foot to it, and it just kind of skips past him into the goal. But this third goal, it's a combination of so many of the things, in that it is an opponent adapting to what Locomotive had been doing successfully in the first half. It is coming in quick succession after they just conceded and not holding sort of that fortitude to be able to see through a difficult period in the game. And this new defensive system kind of breaking down again. So there's the layers of Locomotive's rough run are all sort of included in this third goal from Indy.
Yeah, that's fair. I think something that we've talked about as well is just not sensing the danger. And you're right to highlight the pre-assist from Aiden Quinn. I think it is. He clips that ball over to Budari, takes 4 players out of the game with a simple ball across midfield, like you said, completely bypassing the press. And now we've got 4 guys running back towards their own goal, which is never good. And then, the thing about these kind of goals, and this Douglas Martinez goal that I hate, is he's pointing to where he wants the ball. And it's there's no better indicator of what they're trying to do here. He's asking for the ball to be played into this space, and it gets there, and he gets there, and it's a goal. That just really, really annoys me, because someone has to be picking that up. They're just not. And I don't know if it's a lack of communication or just not understanding the roles yet. Clearly it's not understanding the roles yet, but I think someone needs to give somebody a shout there, and say, man on, come on. But yeah, it's more naive stuff at the back, and our press completely undone by that clip ball by Quinn, who, this midfield, by the way, for Indy is Jack Blake, Aiden Quinn, Lindley, Asante. Give me a break. Are you kidding me? That's probably the best midfield in USL on paper. And they played like it on the night, to be fair.
Yeah. 2019 USL, all-star team, basically.
Yeah. It's just absurd. So, and there's talent all up and down this team, too. Their defense is also very good. So yeah, there's just a succession of failures to see that danger is approaching, right? So
yeah,
just naive.
There is a moment in the 83rd minute where, because El Paso, I'll be honest, did not mount much of a resistance after Indy's eventual winner. But in the 83rd minute, there is an incident where Aiden Quinn slides in on Nick Hines, and I think does foul him, and there probably should be a Locomotive penalty at the end of this game. That being said, and the controversy aside, because it is sort of a bang-bang call, and it's basically one of those that, if the referee gives it, then it's a penalty, and if he doesn't, then it isn't. And... It's very funny to me that in the USL's highlights package, it is labeled as foul by Aiden Quinn. So yeah, I did enjoy that they were basically tacitly acknowledging that this maybe should have been a pen. But all in all, the fight back from Locomotive just wasn't really there again, and they come up short as we said, 3-2 loss. And I mean, the rough run goes on. I think it is worth mentioning still that those 2 goals for Locomotive were both of their shots on target on the night. So that is obviously not good when you're just not generating any sort of like shots on target beyond one header and a rocket from distance. They're just not. They still offensively. We kind of focus on the defense because we conceded 3 goals on the night and scored 2, but offensively, even with the shakeup, I think it's unfortunate to say, but Zacharias looked like relatively ineffectual, like in attack. I think he was good in the press, but struggled to like assert himself in attack. Same with Gomez. Petrovic was like relatively tame, I would say. Kostishin again, like not really a lot to speak of like going forward. So yeah, just a rough. I mean, it just continues to be kind of rough up front for the forwards, as we kind of mentioned up front, or up front of the episode. As you mentioned, 10 now winless and 5 losses in a row. So I mean, what was a bad run has now gotten obviously desperately bad. The Seriously Loco match preview. Arguably, there's no better opponent for the next game than Hartford Athletic, who are, I mean, if not the worst team in USL, definitely the second worst team. Lights, I think, would be the only contender for a worse team right now. They have lost 17 matches this season. So you would imagine that this is a walkover, but I guess like the moral of the story is, Mikka, there's no easy games for this Locomotive team right now.
No. And Hartford, I was paying attention to their form recently, and the game that I think they hosted Pittsburgh, they came back from 3-0 down to equalize 3-3 against Pittsburgh, the best team in the East, and a really staunch defense. Yeah. I think they're like 6 points clear or something like that in the table. Could be wrong on that, but I mean, for Hartford to put up that much of a fight against the best team in the East is worrying to me. They did end up losing because Pittsburgh did score one more, and I mean, it's tough. I think we literally just experienced that with Indy. But yeah, I mean, we also don't have much history with this team. I mean, we played out to a 1-1 draw last summer. I think that was the game that Diego Barca scored a really nice goal. Yep. Okay. So, yeah, even then on the night, like our attack that night was like Hines, Zacharias, Gomez. And so, no Lucho in that one. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say what's going to happen with this one. I mean, like you said, on paper, you think that this is a good opponent to have, but we are going, literally across the country to play this side who might feel a little bit hard done by against Pittsburgh and thought, that game was there for the taking, at least for a draw against the best side in the East. So they'll be wanting to right the ship, and they probably see us as a bit of like an opportunity as well. With the really poor run that we're in. So, I mean, it'll be interesting because both these teams kind of have nothing to lose at the moment. So maybe we'll get a lot of goals.
Yeah. No, it will be interesting to see just how much they fight for this one. I guess the signs of life for Locomotive against Indy, is it enough to be optimistic about how they show up against Hartford? And I guess taking into account the fact that Hartford had a midweek against Pittsburgh, do you think that's any reason to be more optimistic?
I mean, it's interesting because Hartford have been on the end of some hidings, but even in those hidings, they score goals. So with the state that our defense is in, like that worries me a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. So I don't know. I mean, you've got Antoine Hobno who scored against Pittsburgh, and I marked him as someone I thought would have a big impact. I don't know that he's had as big of an impact as you would expect, but now he's off the mark for the first time in a little while. And I just think they're going to be looking at us much the same way that we might be looking at them, of like, this is an opportunity to beat a side that's down bad. So yeah, I mean, they have some good players. I mean, Amo, Makangila, now Logue, of course, of El Paso Locomotive extraction. And yeah, I mean, they're probably, I would say, underperforming a little bit. And did they switch coaches mid-season?
They did,
Chad Ramos
yeah.
to Namazi?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, Hope No with the goal and the assist. So, I mean, he's feeling himself now after that. But Barrera actually, all the substitutes are the ones that, yeah, 3 of their substitutes against Pittsburgh had goal involvement. So, I mean, talk about impact.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that we can say the same as far as impact subs. So that could be another aspect to this game.
I mean, just the names of Amo and Makangila, like, they've hurt Locomotive bad in the past. Between RGV and Colorado Springs, I mean, those are just like, yeah, those are names that strike fear. And I think the reality for Locomotive, like, you know, kind of like I said, is just like there's no givens right now, and there's no easy games. I mean, a couple of months ago, I looked at this stretch of, you know, Hartford, Monterey Bay, Orange County, like, it's like, oh man, like, we've kind of worked our way through the tougher part of the season, and now we get like some easy points on the board. I think we have lights after OC. And while Hartford and Monterey are both like struggling, so are we. You know, we are right down there. We are right down there in terms of, like, we are the worst form team in the league. I think that it, like, goes without saying, in losing 5 in a row. And then Orange County is really good, turns out. Yeah, so even games, even though we have like 3 what I would call, you know, easy games comparatively in Hartford, Monterey, and Las Vegas out of the next 4, there's no guaranteed points in any of those.
No.
Like, on our current form.
No. I really don't know what to expect. I mean, I'm kind of glad that this is away from home, to be honest, because I think it would be hard to rock up to the swap for a second weekend in a row, given we just lost to our former manager. So, you know, earlier in the season we were road warriors, so I'm hoping that this will spark something, but we'll just have to see. 5:00 kickoff, a reasonable kickoff time for you, being in Eastern time, so that's nice.
Yeah, 7 p.m. I don't know. Do we do a depression watch along?
Might have to do it to him.
Yeah.
As long as the OnlyFans models don't infiltrate again.
I've got Twitch mod tools on now, so
okay.
We're good. We're safe from the OnlyFans.
Because we were like held hostage last time.
Yeah, we've fixed that. Yeah, so we may have to do the watch party to him, as you said. Mikka, before we wrap up here, there was obviously some big USL news today, in that it was announced that San Diego Loyal would be ceasing operations at the end of this season. Obviously, always devastating to lose a club for a set of fans that has been around, and I think each of us can kind of, you can put yourself in their shoes quite easily in imagining what life is like minus El Paso Locomotive, and for all of the nonsense and all of the criticism and things that we talk about, like the idea of them not existing is still heartbreaking. And so for a set of fans, like for their club to no longer exist, obviously a punch in the gut. And I guess like your quick thoughts on San Diego ceasing operations and what it means for maybe USL and US soccer, I guess, in general.
Yeah, it's a huge shame. I think San Diego Loyal have brought something really cool to the league and their fans. Of course, they're a club that has like been rooted really in their fan culture. It's just such a shame, really, because I mean they looked like they could be a force in the West. Really, they have a lot of good players. Loyal fans, as I said, big names in the C-suite, like Landon Donovan and the like. So it's just such a shame, and I think we know why this is happening because MLS is now targeting, or is going to develop a San Diego franchise, and Loyal just simply can't compete. And I think they probably think of this as a little bit of like a mercy killing so that like, their players can find new homes and things like that and not keep them in limbo or try to see out another season and have it, fail spectacularly or something. I mean, I don't know if that they'd be being good stewards of the club if they let that happen. So they make this decision now, but it's just such a shame. And we've seen this before. We saw it with St. Louis. We saw it with Austin. USL Championship just, it can't compete. And I've seen some takes about like, well, the fans allow this because they just jump ship to the MLS side. And to that, I say that that's really not fair. Like, I don't think it's fair to blame fans. I mean, sure, we all have some impact on it. We're the ones spending the money on this product, as it were. I hate to call it that, but that's how they see it. They see us as customers, not fans. But I think like the powers that be are really who we need to be looking at, and the powers that be that keep our system closed, to be honest. And I'm not going to go in a whole pro-rel rant or anything. I know it's a lot more nuanced than we have time to really get into, but it is just a huge shame, and it's something that I think is preventable if we had an open system. But I can't that's the other thing too, is I can't really blame the fans because at the end of the day we just love the game. And I like to think that if it would never happen, but if MLS came to El Paso, like, would I shrug off that MLS side? I still love soccer, So it's hard, especially if Locomotive wasn't going to exist anymore. It's like, well, where do I want to support my local? What's my local now? Right? So it's tough. So I don't begrudge San Diego Loyal fans with how they want to deal with this in any other way. If they want to support the new San Diego side, if they don't, that's cool. I mean, I don't think we can tell them how to feel or react about it, but it is devastating.
Yeah, I think to your point, it's one of those things where when people bring up like, well, Loyal could have done this or could have done that, like if they had secured a stadium or something like that, which I want to be really clear, like I'm not saying that they're lying about the stadium issue, and that's absolutely not the primary reason that they're stopping operations.
No.
Like let's be real about this. They could have continued in Torero, like probably for quite a while before it became a genuine issue. And the bottom line is like, when you say, well, this isn't MLS's fault because like they could have secured a stadium or they could have done this or they could have done that. Like when one set of clubs has access to a level of the game that others don't, like Division 1, right? Like if the Division 1 designation is reserved for members of one league that is closed, and no one else can get there, then when city councils or advertisers are interfacing with the leadership of one of these organizations and they're like, well, who are you? Right? And you're not bringing the top tier like to the table, then like what, you're not going to get like you're not going to get the biggest advertisers. You're not going to get the biggest like, you're not going to get any sort of like commitments from city council and all that sort of stuff when there's someone who does have access to those two Division One. Like, they're gonna talk to that guy. Like, they're not gonna talk to you, you know? Like, and at the end of the day, like, locking people out of that, it's just acting like it's a fair competitive market, right? And like, oh, Loyal could have just done better. It's like, that's just not true. Like, it's not a fair fight when Loyal are locked out of the first division when they could, in theory, in another country, you know, win their way there.
Have a San Diego derby. How about that?
Exactly. Like, both teams could exist.
Yeah.
Like, both teams could exist. But when you say, like, well, this is the major league team and this is not a major league team, then, like, what are people supposed to... What are people supposed to do? And like, where is the bulk of the money and the resources and the fans? Like, where are they going to go? In addition to the fact that, like you said, like, Loyal is essentially taking care of the people that work for them in an odd way by saying like, hey, rather than like drag this out, we're going to allow you to go find jobs and like, and to go like, and like, a lot of the people who work for Loyal, I would reckon to guess, like, are probably going to end up employed by the San Diego MLS team. Like not player wise probably, but staff wise, like, I'd imagine there's probably a lot of people who are going to end up employed, like, in the front office or like, you know, whatever, even like ticket reps, all that sort of stuff. Like, those people are probably going to find, like, they can now seek opportunities with the MLS side. So it's like, it sucks because it's like a goodwill move essentially by the ownership of Loyal because they know that it's a losing battle. Like, which just sucks that that's what it is. And we can't form these sorts of like local rivalries. And it takes, you know, like a Ricardo Silva who's just going to stubbornly operate Miami FC because he has $1 zillion. Like, when MLS comes to town, like, you have to have that sort of backing to even make it like make sense. And even then, it doesn't become like a healthy like crosstown rivalry or something like that. It's just two entities operating in like separate, and like maybe hopefully one day they play in the Open Cup. You know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Such a shame. And
so.
My thoughts to the Loyal fans, because that's
for real.
Just sucks so bad.
Well, for those who aren't, you know, if you're a San Diego Loyal fan who is like, well, I don't want to get out and support the MLS side, like, go support your NWSL side in the Wave. Go like, just go that way and feel and have a mildly clean conscience, I guess. But no, like I said, like, no judgment to anyone who hops on board with your local team, because I mean, it will now be the local side, so there's no judgment in following the team that's there. So
yeah, at least not from us. I mean,
no,
saw a lot of takes of people being like, if you like MLS, you're the problem, and it's like, I feel like that's really unfair, and I don't like MLS, so but anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, like I said on Twitter, the good news is that, you know, MLS has only named like a few potential future expansion sites, all of which already house USL sides. So I'm sure it won't be a problem in the future when it's Tampa or Phoenix or Vegas or, you know, insert city here. But it just so happens that all of the places that they're naming have, for potential expansion, already have USL sides that yeah, it just sucks because you can already foresee what's going to happen when that announcement gets made. So
I guess
yeah.
the good part is that MLS will never come to El Paso, so that's nice.
Yeah.
We're just simply not that big of a market for that, so
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, Locomotive will be around for better or for worse. Locomotive will be here, and like we said, we'll be here. We'll be here for it all too. And you can find us on your favorite podcast platform. You can find us on social media at Seriously Loco, and you can find us on Twitch and YouTube for a live stream. Watch along of the game against Hartford, which hopefully we'll be talking about Locomotive finally breaking the streak and getting a win on the board. But now that we're in this 5-game losing streak, I'm almost fine with a point. But I desperately do want to win. And so we'll bring you guys a watch along. That's always just a fun, kind of relaxed way to watch the game, hopefully, and share in the game with a bunch of other Locos fans in the chat. We enjoy those kind of regardless of result. They're enjoyable, I think. But yeah, all that being said, hopefully everyone has a good end to your week. A little bit later episode drop this week, so get your listens in before Saturday when the Locos take on Hartford, and hopefully we'll be talking to you after a big win on the East Coast. But until then, stay Loco.